let's get to part two of this. So I'm obviously not buying Bill Barr's story at all, that there was no improper activity in the CIA. So what's really going on here? Folks, it's clear as day for those of you who've read my books and watched my show forever, that this is the most important story of our time. That our government, our CIA, our intel infrastructure, and our law enforcement operation through the FBI and our State Department was corrupted to spy on a presidential candidate and then President Donald J. Trump. This is a huge story. And why are we bringing this up again now? Because if we don't get to the truth, we will never have any accountability. And I'm not optimistic we're going to get any through the legal system, as evidenced by these statements by Barr, which seem entirely ridiculous and implausible. I'm really sorry. What's going on here? Number one, 2 points. This was clearly an information laundering. You know, like money laundering? You sell drugs, you can't go to the bank and say, hey, here's my money from my crack cocaine deal. You can't. You have to launder, clean the money. You set up that whole show Ozark on Netflix is all about that. How people set up legitimate businesses to launder dirty money through to make it look like it's real. Ladies and gentlemen, information looks like that too. This was an information laundering operation. Joe, we've only been saying this now for 4 years. What's information laundering? It's when you take fake information, like Trump colluded with the Russians to win the election. Fake. It's made up. It's totally discredited. And you give it the patina of truth by laundering it and pushing it through multiple legitimate businesses like you would be money laundering. What were those legitimate businesses? The FBI, the State Department, and the CIA. When you push the same information from Steele and Halper and Hillary Clinton's campaign, who was paying for this fake information, when you push it through all these entities and they get back to the FBI said to itself, my gosh, we're hearing this from the State Department, from the CIA, from Harry Reid, from Steele, from Halper, from our agents in New York. Gosh, it must be true. We're getting it from all these different people. It was never true. It was an information laundering operation from the start, where they took fake information, pushed it through, flooding the zone. You know what flooding the zone is in football? You throw a bunch of receivers downfield, you just throw the ball up. That's what they did. They threw a Hail Mary, a bunch of fake pee-pee tape stuff. They flooded the zone and they sent it to every channel possible, figuring by the time it got to the FBI from 20 different people that the FBI would be dumb enough to believe it. And they did. Or they pretended to. Hopefully that's the focus of Barr. Number two, what's really going on here? And when I say what's really going on, I mean, why is Barr saying this? CIA, no improper activity. So number one, I think the information laundering operation is his first target. But number two, I think he's trying to avoid some significant international embarrassment. I am not justifying this. I'm not suggesting this is the right thing to do. I'm simply giving you what I believe to be the truth. You've heard it from Nunes and you've heard it from others. There was exchange of information. We just don't have the record trail of it because clearly somebody was hiding the record trail by covering it up. Ladies and gentlemen, if this information was coming from the United Kingdom and the United Kingdom and others, I will never be allowed in the UK again after this show or other shows. If the United Kingdom and others were the kingpins behind a scandal to frame Donald Trump for a Trump-Russia collusion hoax that never happened, and the UK and other foreign partners were behind it because they thought Hillary would win and they could cover their tracks, do you understand how dramatic of an impact that would be on international relationships if all of this became public? What's really going on? I think Barr and certain players in the Justice Department understand the nuclear bombshell this would be that a foreign government framed the President of the United States in conjunction with our CIA, and that they're focusing on the information laundering part, and they're going to hang up the FBI folks first with these law enforcement consequences, potential prosecutions. We'll see. I'm not sure. I'm not confident about that. But I believe that the international black eye and the global intergalactic embarrassment it would be, and the complete, utter failure of our intelligence agencies to do anything other than spy on innocent American citizens in conjunction with supposed friendly governments of ours would be the biggest black eye in U.S. foreign policy in modern human history. I think Barr's team sadly understands that, and I think they're trying to sweep that under the rug. What does that have to do with the London connection? Well, ladies and gentlemen, London is obviously in the United Kingdom. I'm sorry, but there are some liberals listening. You got to get that out of the way. You know what's really weird about this case? We've already established the United Kingdom had a role in passing intelligence to Brennan's CIA. I just showed you the articles. Multiple sources. CNN, The Guardian. Not right-wing sources, folks. I just showed it to you. Well, what if I told you the nexus of this whole case was the UK and London? Who was in charge of our London operation for the CIA when all of this stuff was going down? Gina Haspel. Who's Gina Haspel? She was the station chief over there. She's the director of the CIA right now. Someone's got something to hide. You think she didn't know? So again, multiple media reports about the United Kingdom passing intel about Trump and Russians, fake intel to frame Donald Trump. She's the station chief in London, and she doesn't know nothing about nothing? Well, let's walk through the London connection one by one because there's some eye-openers in here too. London-UK connection, to keep it simple for the liberals watching who are having trouble following this. Let's go to this Real Clear Investigations article by Eric Felton from a while ago. How this all seemingly went down in London right under the nose of Gina Haspel when she was in charge of it. And she's our current CIA director? Weird. Real Clear Investigations, quote, headline, FBI's man in Europe undercuts Orr's claim of limited Russiagate role. Forget the title for a second. Let's get right, give it to you so in case you want to look it up yourself. Put it in the show notes today as well. Here's a screenshot from that piece. This is an interesting piece, folks. So this agent Gaeta, Gaeta, he was in the London office of the FBI. Gaeta's known Steele, quote, since 2010. Christopher Steele, who produced all the fake Russia information that made its way from the UK to the United States. So Gaeta's known Steele since 2010 when they were introduced to one another by Bruce Orr at the DOJ. Bruce Orr, whose wife was working for the company hired by Hillary to create this stuff. Weird, folks, crazy. It was not a random encounter. Orr appears to have been drumming up business for Christopher Steele, having traveled to London to host a meeting between Gaeta and Steele in London, at which Steele pitched having his private intelligence firm do work for the FBI. It goes on. Over several years, Steele provided Gaeta with reports and leads. And so when Steele called at the beginning of July of 2016 to say he had important information, Gaeta flew to London. During a meeting at Steele's office on July 5th, that can't be. The case didn't open until July 31st. How is this happening on July 5th? During a meeting in London on July 5th, Steele gave Gaeta pieces of what would ultimately become known as the dossier, including the report claiming there was a video recording of Russian prostitutes urinating for Donald Trump's entertainment, otherwise known as the pee-pee tape. So the FBI's official story the whole time is that this case against Donald Trump didn't open until July 31st of 2016. But Joe, I just read in that piece that there was a meeting in London on July 5th. Joe, just checking, audience ombudsman time. I know this is tough. Think this through. July 5th is before or after July 31st? Take a moment. This is very important.
It's before.
The verdict is in. Joe's a genius. Yeah. It happens to be before, and Joe is correct. Thank God for the audience ombudsman. I couldn't figure that out. Really weird how Gaeta, this FBI agent, flies to London, where Gina Haspel is the CIA station chief in London. We know the UK is passing us information that's fake about Trump called the dossier. That information, because that's the only information about Trump and Russia anybody had. It was all fake. And we know the meeting happens 3 weeks before the FBI told us they started the case against Trump, which is weird because that doesn't seem to be right, that story. Now, Gaeta's an interesting guy. FBI agent, long-term relationship with Steele. Covered, by the way, I'm not into this shameless pluggery. You know, I don't talk about my book much. Folks, there's a chapter. It starts on page 79 in my book, Follow the Money, and I'm going to show a screenshot from where I go over this whole Gaeta, Stephen Soma, Halpert relationship with Steele. Please read that chapter. You don't even have to read the whole book. Just read that chapter. Page 79 on. Gaeta's an interesting guy. He knows Steele. They go way back. Steele's the source of all this nonsense about Trump and Russia. They meet in London, right under the nose of Gina Haspel, the CIA. You think she didn't know? She's the station chief in London, where the FBI's meeting about the PP hoax. So Gaeta flies over there, weirdly, 3 weeks before they said they started the case. That's just really crazy. But the Real Clear piece goes on. They bring up another interesting little tidbit here about how this information starts laundering its way through various entities. Quote, after the meeting, Gaeta wasn't sure what to do with the documents, the PP documents, you know, folks. He wanted to get the Steele reports to the right people at the FBI, but didn't know who the right people would be. He was reluctant to ask around for fear of spreading word of the explosive information. Finally, in the middle of July, I thought this started at the end of July. Finally, in the middle of July, Gaeta reached out to a trusted colleague who was in the New York field office. Oh, isn't that strange? A trusted colleague in the New York field office. Weird how that worked out. I thought the FBI said they didn't get the dossier until September 19th. Do you understand how none of this, what you've been told, none of this is true? So the CIA, Gina Haspel, who's in charge of the London office, has no idea there's a meeting in London happening about the biggest scandal in human history, that Trump is supposedly working with Vladimir Putin to win an election. Biggest scandal in human history. It's happening in London. And our CIA station chief, current director of the CIA, has no idea? Sure. The FBI gets this dossier about Christopher Steele's dossier laying out this scandal. Trump is working with Putin to influence the election. They get this dossier then, but they've insisted on the record they didn't get it till September. But this is July 5th. Joe, again, one more time. July's before September, correct? Think it through, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Round two.
Easy.
Joe, he's never wrong. The guy's a genius. He's the Einstein of ombudsman. July's before September. The FBI's told us over and over, the PP hoax dossier had nothing to do with us starting the case. It had everything to do with Papadopoulos. Really weird, because your guy in London meeting right under the CIA's nose there is meeting with the guy who wrote the PP dossier in July and says, I wanted to get it to this colleague in New York. Who was that colleague? Well, that's going to be important. I'm going to get to that in a second and my suspicions there. So we know now the CIA had to know what was going on. It was all going down in London. The FBI was meeting in London before they said they opened the case, July 5th. They said they opened it July 31st. They know they had the dossier before that, even though they told us they got it in September because it's July. So then we know that Gaeta passes this dossier to a colleague in New York. Who is that colleague from New York? Well, in my book, what's the chapter number? Hold on a second. 79. Oh, it's called The Strange Tale of Case Agent 1, Chapter 6. Who's Case Agent 1? Case Agent 1 in the Inspector General's report that looked into all this was the one, quote, responsible for most of the errors in the FISA report. In other words, Case Agent 1 is the one who went in and swore that this whole PP dossier in front of a judge to get a FISA warrant to spy on Trump, swore that those facts had been verified when in fact they were a hoax. All of it. Who do some people believe Case Agent 1 is? It's from my book. They believe it was this guy, Stephen Soma, who incredibly, folks, had a connection to what? The New York field office. Wait. Gaeta said he passed the dossier to a colleague in the New York field office of the FBI. But weird, the FBI, this is in July, said they didn't get it till September. This is from my book, and I have to throw this in there. The lovely Paula strongly objected. This is an actual screenshot, if you're watching on Rumble, from my phone of my book. Paula strongly objects. She wanted me to use a digital copy because it was clear. This is an actual screenshot. She was nice enough to add the cover, though. So I have to give credit. Here, from my book. Again, who's Case Agent 1? A lot of people believe it was Soma. Anyone who scrutinizes, this is from my book, the timing of Soma's conclusions, in other words, his swearing to the FISA warrant, is likely to smell a rat. Let me back up again. Soma was a Russian ops expert when he worked in the New York FBI office. The Federalist reports that before Soma came to D.C. to join the Crossfire team in August, he worked as a special agent in counterintelligence in New York, where he zeroed in on Russian operations. That suggests he was operational in the New York office around the time Steele's Rome-based handler, Gaeta, sent a copy of Steele's first 2 memos to an FBI supervisor in the New York office on July 28th. July 20. This is not possible, folks. The FBI continues to insist they didn't get the dossier to September 19th. But you know what's even weirder? That when Lisa Page was asked by Trey Gowdy, Lisa Page, FBI lawyer, who was one of the leaders of the team in spying on Donald Trump through the FBI, remember her having the affair with Peter Strzok? When Lisa Page was asked by Trey Gowdy when they first got some of the reports, and Trey Gowdy said, "So you got them on July 28th?" She said, quote, "Right, thank you." I thought they got him on September, the dossier report. I thought September. Sounds like somebody's lying here. You know what's even weirder too? That the FBI continues to insist they opened up this case right under the CIA's nose and Gina Haspel's nose in early July of 2016, yet they continue to insist that didn't happen. They opened up the case in late July, despite meeting in early July, right under the CIA's nose in London. Sounds like they're hiding something, no? Sounds like what they're hiding is the fact that their whole case was based on the PP dossier. You know what's weird too? That a source they were using with connections to the intelligence community, a guy by the name of Stefan Halper, an FBI source who they were using for this report, had met with Carter Page, who was one of the subjects of the dossier. Trump team member Carter Page had met with him before July 31st and early July as well. That's really crazy, isn't it? The FBI has this source. They say they didn't open up the case till July 31st, yet their source is meeting with a Trump team member before July 31st. Sounds like somebody's lying. So now I think you get my London connection and what they may be hiding, some international embarrassment. So I said I'd had some good news, bad news. I do Parler teases on Parler of the show exclusively every morning before the show. And I said to you that there's some good news, bad news. I just gave you the bad news. The bad news is I am convinced, I'm sorry that Barr is not telling you the whole story. His insistence that there was no improper activity on behalf of the CIA is obviously erroneous based on left-wing reporting, The Guardian and CNN. Somebody passed the fake pee-pee stuff about Trump to our CIA. We know it. Why is Barr hiding it? Because I think they're trying to avoid the biggest scandal in human history, that our friendly governments were spying on a presidential campaign for us. Period. Full stop. That's the bad news. Okay, please give us some good news. This is not meant to take the edge off the bad news. It's just meant to give you the truth. Barr has repeatedly stated, this is the, I'm going to get this Epic Times piece in a second, but has repeatedly stated on the record, including in an interview with Martha McCallum about a year ago on Fox News, that he is zeroing in this investigation into this, into the whole Spygate scandal, spying operation, that he's zeroing in on, quote, private actors. He's used that term twice now. He used it in an interview about a year ago with Martha McCallum. Let me get to play. It's just, he said it. Just try. We played it on the show before. But in the very same interview with Kim Strassel, he said that term private actors again, that we're looking into the FBI, not so much the CIA, and also the activities of private actors. Here's a piece in the Epic Times, be up in the show notes. Again, bongino.com/newsletter. The newsletter is the show notes. Just subscribe. You can read it there. Ivan Penchikov, Epic Times. Durham's broad Spygate inquiry looking at private actors, Barr says. That was from December of 2019. He said it again in the weekend interview, So he said this multiple times. That was in 2019. And he said it again in the interview with Kim Strassel in the Journal. The same term, private actors. What is he talking about? And why is this good news? Let's tie it together. We know foreign governments were spying on Donald Trump for our government here. Biggest scandal of our time. We know there were no records of it. Nunes has repeatedly stated there is no official intelligence product from these foreign governments. So, Joe, if the biggest scandal of our time, foreign governments were spying on a presidential candidate for the United States government, Barack Obama and others, if we know they were doing it and there were no formal channels, then how would they hide that? Maybe use private actors